So Nintendo recently streamed their Switch 2 Direct, where they showed off a bunch of games and they shared information about the Nintendo Switch 2. And something that struck me as suspicious was the way that they were completely avoiding sharing anything in the way of price points in the Direct proper. Now, following the Direct, there was a press release that did disclose the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 itself. It'll launch on June 5th, 2025, with a price point, an MSRP of $450. Now, if you get the bundle that includes Mario Kart World, the new Mario Kart game announced for Nintendo Switch 2, it is exclusive for the console, and it is a launch title. The bundle that comes with the game will be priced at $500. So essentially, if you get the bundle, you get Mario Kart World for $50 instead of its actual MSRP. And the MSRP of Mario Kart World is the main point of this video, as that is something that Nintendo intentionally kept very low key. It's something that they didn't mention in the Direct. It's something that they don't really try to flaunt, because they know about the backlash that this would generate. If you go to the official Nintendo website and look at the Mario Kart World page within it, as you scroll down, you'll find information about the game. The game does look awesome, by the way, with the open world that they have introduced and various elements that make this clearly the most ambitious Mario Kart game to date. Like, the game itself actually does look pretty incredible. But then you scroll all the way down and you'll find what is essentially the quote-unquote fine print that Nintendo didn't want you to see. Mario Kart World will launch on June 5th, 2025 alongside the Nintendo Switch, and it will be priced at $80. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first foray into increasing video game prices by an additional $10. It was not long ago that games went from $60 to $70, and now games are going from $70 to $80, and Nintendo intends to kickstart that with the Nintendo Switch 2. The practice on its own is already scummy as it is, but the fact that Nintendo tried to keep this low-key and try to keep customers unaware of this, especially during their big presentation when they try to garner as much positive PR as possible, just makes this even scummier. So what are the implications of this $80 MSRP? Well, as you know, when one company starts something, a trend, and they get away with it, all other companies follow suit. What this means, ladies and gentlemen, is that once this game launches, other companies will feel safe in releasing their games for $80. And they'll say, well, games are expensive to make, and so we need to increase the prices. But as I've said in past videos, games have already increased in price, just in really sneaky ways through the implementation of monetization tactics like microtransactions, loot boxes, battle passes, the various editions, that paywall content. Games have become more expensive for consumers. Now, you do have those more single-player games or games with online features that are not live services that do not have monetization elements, but even then, to increase the price from $70 to $80 shortly after the price was increased from $60 to $70, it's just something that I guarantee you the gaming community will not find acceptable. But it will become the new normal because Mario Kart is just such a big IP that people will buy this game. It'll ultimately still sell gangbusters, and seeing the success of an $80 price game kind of achieve that, the kind of sales numbers that it'll encourage other companies to follow suit. And so Nintendo is kickstarting this trend where games will essentially become more expensive. And during the current economic landscape, I mean, this couldn't come at a worse time. I mean, here in America, if wages kept up with inflation, it'd be one thing, but that's just not been the case. And so for game prices to increase by another $10, the base price that is, I mean, this is just as anti-consumer as things can get. And what sucks about this is that while Mario Kart World will not have monetization elements like microtransactions and battle passes and the like, there will be other companies who will follow this now $80 MSRP trend and will not just stop at that. They will, on top of that, layer monetization elements like microtransactions, loot boxes, battle passes, editions, so on and so forth. I mean, Nintendo already pushed it when they priced Tears of the Kingdom at $70 instead of traditional $60, but at the very least by then, other companies had set the trend, and one could argue that Tears of the Kingdom is such a massive game that as a single-player game with no other monetization elements, it might justify the price point. Mario Kart World, it looks like a great game and all, but is it an $80 game, like $80 base price game? I guarantee you that there are games with far bigger budgets that are far bigger in scale that are priced at $60 to $70 that would kind of put Mario Kart World's $80 MSRP to shame, especially when those now $70 games have gone on to show that even at that price point, you are able to achieve great financial success. You don't need to go full $80 to be able to be sustainable as a game company. And Nintendo knows all of this. It's just they wanted to keep this information utterly and completely buried. You have to go to the Nintendo website, to the Mario Kart World page, and you have to scroll all the way down to see this information. But this is the internet. No matter how much you try to bury information, people will eventually find it. And when it is as egregious as this, they'll start spreading word of mouth. And as you can see right here, people are already talking about how scummy this is. Do not buy this. It's a lock. GTA 6 is going to be $100 easy. Honestly, at this point, yeah, I can see that happen. There's been rumors and speculation that Take-Two wants to price GTA 6 at $100, and now they've given all the more justification for it because Nintendo's now setting the bar at $80 minimum to purchase a full-fledged AAA game release. And then something else that the internet has discovered is that Nintendo's pricing digital versus physical games differently. So that $80 price point is just for the digital edition. This right here shows 80 euros, but same difference. The physical version will be 90 euros. So actually, the standard now for games, especially if you want to get them physically, is $90. So now we're really encroaching that $100 base price point MSRP for video games, and it is just something that game companies are going to run with. It is something that's going to give them a level of comfort to be able to keep pushing the boundaries of what that base price point for games can be. Now, Nintendo isn't going to price games at $80 for digital across the board. So Donkey Kong Bonanza, for example, that's going to be $70 for digital and $80 for physical. But still, that is ultimately a significant price hike, especially for those like me and many others who like their games in physical form, as to not give companies full autonomy over the media that we own. We like to have physical media on hand so we know that those games can't be taken away from us should something happen to these games and the companies that publish these games and the licenses surrounding them, you name it. And so now that leads me to wonder what the cost will be for other stuff Nintendo's announced that they haven't revealed price points for, in particular the Nintendo Switch 2 edition games. So if you own Nintendo Switch 1 versions of Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, you are able to upgrade, but what you need to do is purchase upgrade packs. And you can see right here that there are no details as to what the price points will be. So these are the upgrade packs that were mentioned in the Nintendo Direct. We were hoping for a situation where Switch 2 would run Switch 1 games better, but what Nintendo's trying to do is monetize that aspect. And while there's some games like Mario Party, Jamboree, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land that are adding significant new content that might make it worth the hopefully cheap price point that will be when it comes to upgrading the games from Switch 1 to Switch 2, other games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they're essentially just getting graphics and frame rate update and faster loading times and HDR support, all things that should be absolutely free. The one additional thing they're adding is like support for the Zelda Notes game-specific service via Nintendo Switch app, but that by itself should not be worth the upgrade price point. This kind of update where it's just graphical and about performance and technical elements, that should be 100% free. There's no new additional content that's being added to these games, and so many would argue that any kind of price point for upgrading these games graphically and performance-wise to be played on Switch 2 is just not justified. And I say that I hope it's cheap because after this move to kind of make $80 the baseline for games, for AAA game releases, for major game releases, I fear for what the price point for these upgrades will be, what the upgrade packs will actually cost. You know, I would hope that at most they'll be $10, but I would not be surprised if Nintendo had the audacity to price them at $20 or, I don't know, you know, it's just, you never know with Nintendo. But this is one element. While I, did enjoy what they presented in the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, the games looked really awesome. The hardware breakdown was really solid, and I'm excited for the Switch 2. what we're seeing here with Mario Kart 8 and the $80 MSRP is something that you need to be aware of, and hopefully something that people can speak out about enough where companies will start changing their minds or will fear that pricing things at $80 and beyond will be a risk. Because if Mario Kart World becomes a success at $80, then this will absolutely become the new norm. And with physical games now being $90, I do believe that this will just accelerate the goal of making games $100 at base. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is get ready to spend significantly more money on the Nintendo Switch 2 than you did on the Switch 1. And then beyond that, once this $80 MSRP picks up traction, $80 and beyond, expect to be just spending a lot more money on video games in general, and expect that to be layered on top of all of the other monetization elements that already make games more expensive than they once used to be. Don't expect companies to scale back on monetization elements because the MSRP has gone up. They just want more avenues to make more money from customers, extract more money from their wallets so they can present to investors greater financial results. And that's just ultimately the goal. $80 for Mario Kart World is just that I was not expecting. I was not expecting Nintendo to be the one to kickstart the $80 baseline price point for video game MSRPs. But here we are, and you should be aware of this. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Mario Kart World being priced at $80 MSRP for the digital version and $90 MSRP for the physical version. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.